Okay, we're recording. Okay, first thing we start off with after the new year is open forum. So hopefully everybody is well and happy and has lots of questions after the new year. I'm assuming you all saw that Microsoft is going to stop issuing Windows 10 licenses next week or so. For any of these that are still using Windows 10?
Yeah, I still have 10, but I don't need the license.
Yeah, I don't know what would happen if I try and convert another machine from Win 7 to Win 10, whether it would still allow me to use my other license pool that I still have or not, or if they're going to shut that down.
Well, normally if you upgrade 7 to 10, it just becomes a digital license.
Yeah, I've had that where it automatically took the Win 7 Pro license and automatically promoted it to Win 10. However, on one or two machines, that didn't happen.
Oh.
Yeah, so
I'd like to know the characteristic.
They were both Win 7 Pro licensed.
Yeah, well,
it's just that they wouldn't accept it in place. And I had some issues with previous Win 10 on top of Win 7 installs that did not go well. So it had to be a cold Win 10 install, and it didn't have anything you could reference from the previous image, even though I had the disk spinning there and it was on a new disk. It still was recalcitrant about accepting it.
Well, the only thing I can think of if it had to have a cold install is corruption of some kind. It didn't.
Well, I'm sure there was something corrupted along the way in the Win 7 image that Win 10 was definitely unhappy with.
Yeah.
Because it would only get to the reboot phase after it did the initial part of the install, and it would fail there.
Yeah, because I've had somewhere over 8 7s years and years ago that I easily converted to 10. Never had one fail though.
Let's see, how many have I done? I've done 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of them. Yeah. So, and of 10, 2 of them were not happy.
Are you waving, Dennis?
No, he's last meeting he has graphical problem with whatever machine he's on. It might be the Chromebook. I don't know.
No, this one is the 8.1, and I just started it up fresh like 15 minutes ago, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but
I've seen problems with Windows 8 machines.
Yeah, and you've got also the possibility your upload speed on your internet connection might be too low.
I didn't have as much problem with the upload speed. The upload speed was adequate. It's just that the newest versions of Zoom did not play well on Win 8.
That could be too. I mean, why would they be focused on still supporting that when this month of January is the end of life?
Yeah, should be. One would think.
I think.
How long is Windows 10 going to be supported?
Till October 2025 or after, if they extend it.
Yeah.
But that's their option, not anybody else's.
True. Although I also saw some things, I think, on Windows Secrets that were talking about Windows 11 installations, where they make it a lot more difficult to create a local account. If you want to have your own account, not be in a Microsoft account, but the local one.
Yeah, there's been some discussion about that, but it turns out, for example, if you install offline with no internet connection, you'll still end up with a local account.
Yeah, the problem
isn't as obvious. It isn't as obvious how it happens.
Right. I need to convert one that's already been initiated on an online license and put it back to a local account because the person's installing it basically didn't even bother to tell me they were getting a new computer and just sort of threw it up and said, oh, by the way, we need a license key for Office. And I said, what do you need a license key for Office for? And I said, well, we got a new laptop. Well, when did you get a new laptop and who's the one that signed off on that?
Well, and the other thing there though is when you're dealing with installation, especially like a new machine or a refurb machine, uh, it wants the Microsoft account. Yes, uh, I get pulled in sometimes after the fact. So all I do is I keep setting up that attached Microsoft account. I create a new local administrator account. I log into that new administrator account and demote that Microsoft account to standard.
Yeah.
Solves that problem
Yeah.
too.
Well, that's what I may have to do, something to that effect. The issue that I have is, like, I didn't have any warning that this has happened, and
Right.
they want to use these license keys that are part of our old Microsoft volume licensing.
Sure.
And I said, well, got news for you. I'll have to reinstall Office on here with the version, the images of Office that I downloaded from the volume licensing, because I don't think it's going to play with the thing that was preloaded on your computer.
Yeah, probably would not.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, I've run into that before.
Even if you're forced to initially set up a Microsoft account, you can convert that to local. Even the same account, if it's an administrator, can convert itself.
Yeah, that's what I will probably do when I lay hands on it, and probably spend several days playing with it, installing Office and printer drivers and scanner drivers for the church, because those require a little bit more hand-holding.
Yeah. There's always a little work with a new computer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure if they set it up with the correct, I'm sure they didn't set it up with the correct Wi-Fi password, because they won't even be able to reach the printer on that Wi-Fi, because that's the unprotected side that we allow other people to use.
Oh, well.
So, anybody else got questions here? Go ahead, Sid.
You're muted.
As I unmute. And it was weird because I was on a Zoom earlier today and the mute button wouldn't unmute no matter how many times I hit it. But if I held down the space bar, I could talk. But
Oh.
if I hit the mute button, it did nothing.
That
Very weird.
that can happen with Zoom. Sometimes you have to just log out if you want to fix it.
Well, if I had left, I wouldn't have been allowed back in. The township here has Thursday morning bingo over Zoom. And the rule is after the first 10 minutes of the hour, nobody gets let in anymore. So, and I won the first game of the day. So it was, so I'm trying to yell bingo and I can't unmute. And I'm going, bingo!
hold up the sign that says bingo.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm trying to go. But anyway, couple new toys, actually. I got this guy, which, hold on, if I don't, I'll turn off blur background thing here, because there we go. Was this guy, which is a 12-volt battery tester.
Okay.
With built-in Bluetooth, so you can use either the button on the device itself, which is this guy,
Okay.
or you could use their app, which connects via Bluetooth to it, and then it has more functions, including you can rev the motor to 2,500 RPM, and it will do a test under load.
Oh, so this is the Bluetooth to OSO onboard diagnostic too?
No, you hook it. It's a 12-volt battery tester.
Okay.
So you hook it to the positive, negative terminals of the battery.
All right.
And that's also then what powers it.
Okay.
So
but how does it rev the engine?
It does it. As I said, you rev the engine to 2,500 RPM.
I understand. And then it measures to see whether or not you're charging or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And it also tells you what voltage you're at. $22 on Amazon.
That's voltage connections. It doesn't have a clip-on ammeter? No.
No.
Okay.
That's
Because the other thing that normally is used when they're testing for charging, They use a clip-on ammeter on the ground side of the battery, and then you can see what kind of current is actually going into the battery, like whether you have a shorted battery or something else is happening.
Now this has lights that say good, medium, and bad.
Uh-huh.
And then on the other one, full, medium, and low for the battery voltage.
Yeah. I like reading it to 3 digits and then figuring it out. Well, you're at 12.6. You're not charging.
So it takes input voltage from 5 to 20 volts, it says.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So it was a nice way to do that. Then I got this guy because, yeah, I really needed another wireless Bluetooth ear headset. This has a little cable in between, rechargeable battery, 3-hour playtime on a charge.
Okay.
$1.25 at Dollar Tree.
I don't know. Sometimes the Five Below and Dollar Tree cables don't play so nicely. You were probably very fortunate that it came out and worked.
$1.25 for that guy, which even if it didn't work more than a day at that price, it didn't matter. And then the last thing, I'm the guilty person who turned on the closed caption. What's interesting is that before you had to ask the host. Now any user can turn it on themselves.
Oh, that's a new thing with Zoom.
And so I hit it and it automatically, the first person picks the language and it locks them for that language. And if you look at the closed captions now, each person is broken up in the thing with your initials in front of what it's translating you as.
Okay.
The last thing, there's a thing called Otter AI, which is an app for translating spoken text to actual text. They give you, there's a free plan and a paid plan. The free plan gives you 300 minutes a month included. And it works surprisingly well. I was at the travel show last weekend in Rosemont. And a couple of the presentations, I wanted to keep them. So you turn that on your phone. It transcribes it all. It keeps the audio along with it.
Okay.
On the free plan, it'll only do 30 minutes at a time. So you have to stop it before it hits the 30 minutes and then go ahead and start it right away again. However, if you hit the 30 minutes, it'll keep recording the audio. It just won't do transcription past that.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, Sanford has a question. You'll have to unmute, Sanford. Okay, well, I'll when he gets back here, I will then let him have his question. I did have one issue that I had today. I plugged in an old USB 3 Kingston, one of the rubber overmold USBs, and I had it in the machine when I powered down, and then I powered up later, and I went to go access the drive, and it was unmounted. And I said, "Oh, but you're plugged in. I wonder how that is." So I unplugged it, plugged it in. No difference. It was not going to mount the USB. Did it several times. And I said, okay, I'm going to leave it out. I'm going to do a restart. And then I did a restart after do a shutdown and reboot. Then I could plug it in. It would recognize the USB drive. But here I was thinking, this USB drive has just died. And I was just about ready to make a copy of it because I've got stuff on it going back almost 20 years on this drive. So I thought it might be nice to save some of this. So I was able to plug it in. I did a check of the thing. There was no problems found with it. It came up fine, and I made copies of it to another Kingston drive, and now I have a backup. It also happened to have all of my CCS presentations forever on it. Which is one of the reasons I wanted to hang on to it for I may have a backup of it somewheres, but I didn't want to try and go digging it out before tonight's meeting.
Yeah, I've seen situations where USB devices were not recognized, and then I had to leave them plugged in and then restart, and then they worked.
Yeah, because mine had just the opposite. I had left it plugged in when I did the power down and power up. And I remembered us talking about this, that power down isn't really a full power down. Like, well,
Right.
maybe you remember something you don't. So let's see if it checks out to see if anybody's still plugged in when it reboots and see if it'll clear the issue. And it did. So,
Another possibility, and I've had this occasionally with USB drives, whether it's a hard disk or a flash drive, is somehow it forgets the drive letter assignment. So you have
Yeah.
to go into disk management.
well, I went into disk manage it. It was not in disk management. The
Okay.
partition was not available. So check that one already.
Okay, no, that's one of the common ones. I did have to change a housing on an external hard drive for backups because the old one was falling apart. And it looked like it was all good, but it wouldn't be recognized by any computer I plugged it into. So I had to partially disassemble, reseat things, put it back together again, and so far it's fine.
Usually what I found, if it doesn't mount at all, typically the USB controller portion of the thing has failed for some reason. And I've had that happen. That's been the failure mode on most of the USB drives I've had that have not been good. They failed for some reason. All right, Sanford is back.
Trying to.
He came back
Yes,
in.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you had a question.
My bad. New question, actually, it's a new direction for you. I'm going to send a screenshot in just a moment, as soon as I can find it on my laptop. Ba-da-ba-bum.
Are you going to try to be Santa Claus in 2023?
That is not my objective. That is not my objective. So I'm sorry, I'm a little sluggish at getting this task done. But I want to share with you something that popped up on a screen on a PC that I booted up last week. There you have it in the chat.
I'm looking here. I'm waiting for chat up to show here. Okay, come on.
Not showing.
I'm not showing it in chat yet either.
Okay, you have. Oh, it hasn't come across yet. I did
Not
see
yet.
JPEG. I believe JPEGs come in.
I'm looking for any message that comes through.
Occasionally there has been delays, but I can't tell you why.
Okay.
Let me close and reopen chat.
Let me at least try. I'll try it the longhand way to show you the picture that's actually on my phone that I was sending. Library, right here. Okay. Well, I got to turn off, just like before, got to turn off that background stuff. Virtual background. Okay.
Hold on a moment. Let me do this. Let's do speaker mode. Okay, hold it up and talk.
All right. Let me tell you what this says. It says EFI shell version 2.31, current running mode, blah, 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 map. Cannot find required map name. Press escape in 3 seconds to skip the startup Nash. And then it takes you to shell. So this one perplexed me. This was on a PC that I've been using. It's actually a Windows 7 box that I use to record my TV shows with, if you will, still running Media Center. So this just popped up out of the blue and it wouldn't boot. It would not boot for the life of the machine. And I had an epiphany that is, there's something wrong with the hard drive. So I took the hard drive out and plugged in a backup hard drive that I already have sitting with the OS and everything's already configured from it. It's
Yeah.
actually a SSD that I previously removed from this box. Let me take a step back and say this was a team SSD that I got from Newegg about 6 months ago, so it's not that old. And so I removed that and replaced it with the drive that had been in there before. System worked just fine. So now I know the problem is the drive. And part of this figuring out this process is I had to first get into the BIOS because I thought something was weird. Maybe the BIOS map changed or something was screwed up in there. I did a complete reset of the BIOS. That didn't solve the problem. I tried doing F12. Sometimes my drive would show up, but most of the time it did not. So
you had fast food on, didn't you?
this is on. Yes, I did.
You had an EFI BIOS and you had fast food on.
Right.
And was the disk drive that was having a problem, was that an SSD or is it a conventional hard drive?
SSD.
It was an SSD.
SSD, again, it was only 6 months old. Maybe 7 months, something like that. So I just bought it last year from Newegg. It's a 512 gig to replace the 240 that I had in there before that was an SSD. So when I was in the BIOS and I noticed that the drive was not showing up, I knew there was a problem with the drive, and that's when I went and removed it and replaced it with the backup drive, and the backup drive just worked just like a champ. The system had no problems. I took that drive that I removed, put it into a caddy, hooked it up to another PC. It would not see the drive at all. Didn't recognize anything was there. Multiple boots, then eventually it showed up.
That SSD is dying.
Yeah, the SSD is dying, and you might need to use something like what Samsung calls their Magician software to go through and analyze the SSD.
Yeah.
Alls I did, I went the shortcut. I immediately jumped to the end, and that is I didn't bother with any of that. I said it was only 6 months old.
Right.
I contacted the manufacturer. I put an RMA. I sent it out. It's currently in their hands right now.
Right. Yeah. I had something similar with Kingston 1 terabyte SSDs, where they failed long before they were supposed to. And of course, they wanted it back in their hands so they could see how many teraquads have been written to make sure it hadn't exceeded the maximum life of their drive. And lo and behold, it was a Samsung 870. That's what it was. Samsung 870. And it had gotten nowhere near its number of rewrites and had multiple bad sectors and had issues because all the bad sectors, it had way overcommitted the number of defective spots. So I thought, there's something real wrong here. Called up Samsung and sent them that drive, and they sent me a new one. Meantime, I ended up reinstalling on a brand new drive I picked up at Best Buy and kept going with it. And I still have the replacement drive because I had 2 machines had similar problems. Was with an HP desktop, an i5 desktop that was running Win 7 on a hard drive and running Win 10 on the SSD.
Yeah, I also had something happen with an SSD in my NUC where it just simply quit prematurely. I sent the SSD back on an RMA to Simply NUC because it was OEM, and they just simply sent me back a comparable sized but better brand of SSD. The one that I got back, I know is a Phison controller. The original one, I'm not sure. I don't think it was.
Yeah, I mean, I have run the Samsung Magician on my other machines here that have the SSDs, but neither one of them has gotten anywhere close to the same number of problems that I saw on those 2 desktops. Of course, I couldn't control how often they just hit the button to reboot it rather than doing a shutdown and a restart. They just hit the power button. And I'm sure that does not lend well for SSDs if they think they're in the middle of doing something.
Well, I haven't had too many problems with the Samsung Evo series. But any other brand, you're probably right. There can be problems.
Well, and these were both Samsung Evos, 870s.
Yeah,
So like, okay, I thought I was buying one of the best ones you could buy and
yeah.
wouldn't have a problem with it, and all of a sudden, crap. This one's dead, and the other one is actually dying as well. It's just that it will not be, it can't do a backup because it finds errors on some of the legacy material when I did the upgrade on that machine that it doesn't really need. I'm just going to put a new one in and recopy the information from the Win 7 partition and reinstall Win 10 over it, and then let it go from there.
Yeah, must have been a bad production run.
That was something. I'm not sure, and the two of them were both purchased at the same time. And I suspect that even after updating the firmware on it, because I said, well, we'll update the firmware here just to see if that helps it. No, it didn't help it. So whatever it was terminal. And I have to replace the other one probably when I get around to it. And I got one upstairs. Steel is about this big in diameter. And there's two it on it. Okay, other questions? Go ahead, Wayne. Unmute.
Yeah, I had a problem this evening. My 6-year-old HP printer, all of a sudden I get a message. It says that can't find the print head or there's a problem. And so I've ended up ordering a new print head from HP.
Does that include the ribbon cable that connects the print head to the motherboard?
I don't know.
I hope so, because that would be the reason I would think why it can't see the print head, because that's a flexible cable and
Yeah,
those have a tendency to fail, I have found out.
okay.
Not that I have an HP right now, but I used to have an HP, and that was one of the failures that happened to it before I got rid of it. I had something else that had a flexible cable in it that recently failed. I have one of these, we have a feline here, and she has a cat box, and she refuses to use a cat box that has not been cleaned out.
Mm.
So if there's already something waiting in there, she'll go find another spot to do business. So we decided about 6 months ago to order one of these LitterMaid automated litter boxes that use conventional material. So they use the clumping media. And after 10 minutes after the cat has gone inside, it just, the rake moves forward and it dumps the thing into a receptacle and then it runs back and then it's perfectly happy. She wasn't afraid of this thing at all. I mean, she was just glad and watch it, every time it would go off, and she'd run back in there and stare at this thing as it moved back and forth, and everything was fine. And then it started making a little bit more noise, and then a little bit more noise, and then it just stopped. And this is supposed to have a 1-year warranty on it. And they say, don't try and return it back to Amazon, call us at LitterMaid. So I put in the information to LitterMaid, and I told them what the problem was, and I had actually taken it apart to look at it, and I could see there was the motor that moves this rake is inside of the rake itself. Okay, and it's got a little gear it turns, and it has a little circuit board edge, and it goes to a ribbon cable, which is looped back through one side, back to where its power supply source is. And that's how power is delivered to the rake. And there's a circuit card inside that I did not unmount to look and see what was on it. At some point in time I will, but so I called them up and I said, is there replacement parts? Can I see there's a ribbon cable in there. It looks like the ribbon cable might have a little bit of a bend in it. You have a part source or something? You can send me a new ribbon cable and I can attempt to repair. Oh, no, we'll just send you a new one. So there they went, put it in UPS. I had it before Christmas. And I was kind of surprised seeing it that quick after calling them up. I think I called them on the 15th and I had this thing before Christmas. And the new one arrived. Two things I noticed about it. The motor was a lot quieter and the rake moved a bit slower than the previous rake. And I said, well, what do you want me to send back the other one? I said, no, just throw it away. Yeah, that's one way of handling defective merchandise. I guess it's not supposed to last much more than a year anyway, so we'll see how this works.
Well, so I'll try to check the ribbon cable on that then.
Yeah,
So-
just see if the ribbon cable, sometimes there's a way you can remove the ribbon cable and reinstall it. But I would think if the ribbon cable became loose or the contacts were dirty for any reason, it would report, I can't find the printhead.
Okay,
Because it's
Good,
got to, yeah, it's got to send power. It's got to send a fair amount of power to the printhead to vaporize the ink. So, I mean, it's non-trivial. And usually HPs are pretty good, but the way that printhead slams around inside of these machines, you wonder like, hey, you didn't see 0 here. You slammed off the side of the inside of the printer. That's got to knock things loose every once in a while.
Yeah,
well, I had a
there,
problem.
go.
Go ahead. I had a problem because I was using card paper to print on.
Uh-huh.
And the first time I tried to go and it didn't recognize it. So I ended up putting more paper, put it on top. And I noticed it had a little trouble trying to feed it. So I don't know whether
Whenever
it's a
you use cardstock, you got to use as straight a path as possible with the printhead. So anything that curls around usually isn't too good when you run through a printer.
Right.
I mean, I've run 105-pound cardstock through both LaserJet and through Canon inkjet, but I've had to take, so it doesn't put to the feed tray. You open the other tray on the side and it prints and runs straight through.
Right.
Well, this doesn't have a separate tray, so it just
Okay.
got the bottom tray.
Well, no, sometimes there's a thing on the side to open up
Right.
to
Yeah.
let it come out. Yeah.
Right.
And it could be that the cardstock grabbed a hold of part of the ribbon cable and may have yanked on it a bit.
That's what I'm wondering now that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's a distinct possibility. Yeah, you raise your hand too, Bob?
no, all I wanted to add is there have also been reports that HP printers just simply after a certain number of duty cycles or a certain length of time, they just simply say the printhead is dead.
Oh, that's not nice at all. Here,
In other
that's
words-
why I'm hanging on to my old LaserJet 4000N because when I first took it into somebody to have somebody, I was talking to somebody, I had a different laser printer in for work on it. And I said, I also got a laser printer at work that they gave up the ghost on, and I took it and took some pieces of paper that looked like Tyvek away from around the drum. And it turned out it was just regular paper, just stuck there. And I said, and right now it just has a little problem feeding the paper. And he said, oh, you just need a pair of the paper feed rollers. And then they're about $20 a piece or something, $10 a piece or something like that. And I said, well, it's got 93,000 copies on it. Is that a lot? And he said, that printer was designed for 60,000 copies a month. I don't think they build them like they used to. Bert, you had your hand up.
Yes, printheads on HP printers are very difficult to install because there's parts on the inside where the nozzles of the printheads get clogged up. So it's, you may have great difficulty even when just because you bought this part, it isn't an easy thing to get to work. You might go on the internet and do some searches on how printheads get installed.
This printhead has a lever and the whole thing comes out.
They're all the same, but it's not easy. It's a complicated process.
Okay.
Because you could have where it connects. There's an alternate side of it where the print parts clog up. And if you go through some of the videos on how to replace printheads, you'll get a better idea. And because of the cost of the printheads, it might be cheaper to buy a new printer.
Yeah,
It definitely is.
Yeah.
HP also has chips on their toner cartridges on the newer printers that create some issues sometimes too, especially if you got one that starts to be kind of dirty and you take it out so you can clean it, or you get a low notice that it's low on toner when you know that it's only about a month old, and you take it out and shake it, usually try to solve the problem, and then you put it back in. It's usually worse than what it started.
Yeah, Sid, you had your hand up too.
Yeah, I'm confused here. Are we talking about lasers or inkjets?
Well,
Yeah,
one thing,
inkjet.
yeah, inkjet. He has an inkjet that he had a problem with. But he was also running
Because
some
then I'm
heavy-duty
hearing
cardstock through it.
toner,
Yeah.
Because then I'm hearing somebody talk about toner, and toner is normally with laser.
That's what the
Not with
laser smell,
inkjet.
correct. Yes.
No,
So
this-
that's where I
this
was
is an
getting
inkjet.
confused here.
This
Harry,
is-
were you
Inkjet
mentioning
is
an
ink.
inkjet? Because that's not toner, that's actually ink.
No,
It's
that's a
ink.
laser printer that I've got, but I've also, the inkjets I've got, all the cartridges on them now have chips on them that tend to interfere occasionally too.
Right.
Right. That's why my last my last inkjet printer purchase was a Canon. No, it's not a Canon. It's a Brother. One of the multifunction units that happened to be sitting on the end of an aisle at Office Depot when I went in, and it said $110, no discount. And I looked at it and wow, it's got an 11x17 bed on this thing for scanning, and it can handle that size paper, and has individual ink cartridges. Like, okay, got everything I need. And I went and asked him, but hey, you got the CDs and the manual that comes with this? Oh, no, we don't have it. I'll give you another $10. Yes, yes.
I'm just curious, since we're talking printers, has anybody played with one of the Epsons with the big ink tanks now that are supposed to be able to go for an extended amount of time? I was wondering because I wondered because with the smaller cartridges, the ink can dry. So if you've got these big tank units,
Well, I have the Brother has both regular ink cartridges and has extended capacity cartridges. I almost always use extended capacity. The downside is every day about noon, I hear the print head go back and forth because it uses up a little bit of ink each day to keep the print head flowing. So it doesn't ever dry up. I used to have print heads that would dry up and you'd have to try and clean the print head and bounce it back and forth, and put in a new thing. Just was problems that you would run into with that technology where it was the all-in-one ink tank. So I just said my next one will again have independent ink reservoirs, so I only have to replace the one that's empty and not all three or four if I have the black as well. And it's been working 10 years now. So evidently, and it never had a software update for it. I keep checking every once in a while. Do you need a software update? I mean, I have a warning on it right now that says the cyan cartridge is low. However, it's been pretty cyan colored just fine. I'm not breaking down and putting in the new cyan cartridge yet. Thought maybe I can wait until I get two of them that are low and then replace it. But I will probably do it in the next week or so.
so where does the ink go during that noon test? Do you have to?
There
keep
is
paper in it, or-
in all inkjets, there is a tank at the bottom that captures ink. And every once in a while, you'll get an error message that says it's full. And now you have to figure out how to get that emptied out. Probably time to get a new printer.
Oh, it's just squirting the ink out to the platen?
I don't know where it's printing. I think it's printing it over to its own location. It puts it into a particular spot, okay? But it is, because it's not on the platen. In fact, I don't even know if there actually is a platen because the paper comes up. It might just have, like I said, a special place to capture the ink and send it to the used ink reservoir. Because there are error messages on, I think, HP printers that says the used ink reservoir has filled up.
I have an Epson which has one of those reservoirs that you can change out or clean out, and it would tell me if it were full that it would need to be cleaned or changed.
I wonder if a syringe with a needle that is not a pointed needle like we get shots with would be the answer to empty that reservoir.
Well, no, I think you can pull the reservoir out, disconnect it, and then dump it out basically.
Yeah.
And then it's empty. So then I'm not sure how it knows it's full. I think it's probably got an optical sensor on the side of it or something.
Yeah.
Like the ink cartridges do. So, but you can clean it out and use something like a catheter syringe or something like that with a large needle that you can blow a lot of water through it. Most of them are either water or they're glycol soluble.
Ah.
Yeah, so if you have a glycol soluble, I'm not sure if you can actually clean it out with isopropanol or something to that extent.
So it's basically like a toaster crumb tray.
Yeah, exactly the same concept, except it's liquid and it gets your hands permanently stained. Anybody who's refilled an ink cartridge knows exactly what I'm talking about. I used to try and refill ink cartridges, and that was, that was a mistake just waiting to happen.
Hey, if you
It
want,
was a great idea at the time when you couldn't buy cheap cartridges and you only had to use manufactured cartridges, but now you can buy, aftermarket cartridges, or you can actually buy a name brand cartridge. Amazon must beat them up and get the best price or something. So,
well, if you,
yeah, go ahead, Bill.
If
You had a
need
question.
more ink to fill things up, I think I still got some down my basement. Might be about 15, 20 years old.
I got a ribbon re-inker too. Yes, Bill.
I was just gonna say, I just bought, I have a HP, and I just bought the 4-pack of cartridges, the XL cartridges for it, for 38 bucks on Amazon, which I thought was a terrific price. 10 bucks a cartridge.
Yeah, that is a good price.
XLs.
Yeah.
I know when I looked for mine.
Ink, take a look at Amazon.
Yeah, I had used to take my brother cartridges into Costco, but then they discontinued their re-ink service. So I may still try and find some place that will do that. I had mixed results with the refilled ink cartridges anyway. Sometimes they would work fine. Other times they seem to have emptied sooner than expected.
That's
Yeah,
why I
think
went
they-
to lasers.
Well, yeah,
go ahead.
lasers have their own issue. I mean, the problem with most color laser isn't so much the quality as the quantity. I mean, how much toner is in these little cartridges? Nowhere is compared to like the old black and white. Like my old HP LaserJet has a cartridge for black toner that cost me about $75 to $100, but it lasts 20,000 pages. Okay, and the fuser assembly is good for 200,000. When you go to the color lasers, all of a sudden there's a new marketplace in there. They have a small toner cartridge for color that has to be changed out every maybe 6,000, not even that. Maybe the black can go at least 6,000. Some of them only came to 2,000. And I thought, that's kind of ridiculous. You should give me the printer, and then I just have to pay for the consumable, and that would probably be a fair trade. I would still get ripped off.
Well,
What they
on
used
the
to do with
HP
inkjets.
Color Laser, there's an additional one because I have one. Periodically, there's too much of the toner that leaks out of the cartridges, gets on the mirrors. You have to disassemble the whole system to clean off the mirrors and then reassemble it all and pray that it all works again.
That's what I used to find with the aftermarket filled toner cartridges. I've had ones that actually ended up with a cracked toner door. So, I mean, it would leak out there and make a mess, and ended up having to replace the fuser assembly. I didn't replace it. I took it to a shop and paid the man, and figured I'm money ahead by having him do it. So, okay, other questions? Anything other than printers today?
Oh darn, I was gonna do one last printer one. I had
Go
a
ahead.
friend who was in Morton Grove who invented a refill kit for the inkjets. He would have shipped to his house these giant drums of ink, which he would then make the kits with. And he did his own formulation. They made the ink to his specifications. And he did that for quite a few years, selling those kits. He got fed up with it when they went to the DMCA kind of chips in the cartridges.
Yep.
Cause the kid even had the small drill bit to drill the hole in the top of the cartridge, which then had the syringe which fit that hole to
Mhm.
then put the ink into it.
My problem with some of those was there was no way to relieve the pressure when you were putting the ink in if it was that tight of a hole, because you wanted to seal it up again after you were done. And you almost needed a relief hole, otherwise it would bubble up, and that's why I held my fingers up, because I always used to get that stuff all over my fingers.
Yeah, the kit even came with little rubber plug to put in
Yeah.
the hole when you.
I probably had one of those. Yeah,
Was a cool way to do that.
yeah. But I just look now when I can find the my printer cartridges on sale or something. I said, oh, there they are. The XLs are on sale. I'll go ahead and buy them. And it's maybe $40, $50 usually in that when they're on sale. If I had to pay list, they were like 70 something. So yeah, at a discount. Don't pay full price.
Forgive the test in chat. I was curious because I didn't know you could send a picture in chat, so I had to try one
Yeah.
just to see.
It's there.
Yeah, I'd seen that one. Did you post that before on Facebook?
No, I found it tonight on Facebook.
Oh, okay, that's where I've seen it before. Okay, other questions? Okay, Bill.
Yeah, at another meeting, I was talking about my grandson's laptop, brand new laptop that got water on it. And it turns out it was bad. So I was tearing it apart. I was gonna take the hard drive out of it. I never saw a conventional hard drive in the thing. So I don't know.
It's probably an M.2 formatted drive that's 22 millimeters wide by anywhere between 30, 42, 60, 80, or 110 millimeters long, like a stick of chewing gum.
Yeah, I did find something that looks similar to that. I
Yeah.
thought might be a hard drive, but
It is.
I
That's
didn't
a
know.
modern style.
There was no
Yeah, it's an
fan or anything
SSD.
like that, or.
That's right.
So it must have been just total solid state.
Yes, it's all
Yeah.
SSD. It's probably an NVMe model of SSD, which means it's faster than the old SATA style, which was at 6 gigabytes per second.
Yeah, well, I didn't keep it because I don't know how to use it.
You take out one screw, it pops up a little bit, you pull it out. Then if you're going to use it and you don't have a machine that uses that, you get an external housing, you stick it in that external housing, and you can use it as a solid state USB backup drive or something like that.
And I got 4 of those already. But I had to tear the whole machine apart to get at it. That's not easy anymore.
Well, I just had a nephew that it's an older machine than what your son's machine was, but he totally outgrew his 256 gigabyte chewing gum stick, and he went out and bought, without knowing that's what he had, and got a regular 2.5 format. And then came over and asked me to change it out. Fortunately, I had an NVMe M.2 formatted drive, so we swapped what he bought versus what he needed. I changed it out, cloned it back to the new drive, and everything works fine.
Cool. So my to change the subject a little bit, my son-in-law decided he was going to sell his interest in the Cary Ale House and Brewing, and I was going to share with you what my grandson Peter actually wrote for his dad. He's 5 years old. Dad, I do not want you to sell the ale house.
How much does he get?
I was a bit impressed to see what a 5-year-old could actually write by sounding out words. I don't think I was able to do this at his age. I may have known my math tables, but I couldn't write like that. Interesting, yes. Okay, let's see. It's getting close here. If any other questions, I'll do a couple more questions and then I can get into my presentation. So,
I'll ask one more.
sure, go ahead.
I have an old Asus machine that has Windows 10 on it, and I just refurbished it software-wise, so I can give it to my brother because he doesn't have a machine at home. And I was trying to go into the boot sector to have it see the USB port on boot up. I got in there okay, but I guess the machine is so old that there wasn't an option to go to a USB port. It was only CD drive.
Well, there's a possibility you can find the last BIOS they made for that machine.
Well, that's
and,
what I was,
and try
that's what I was
to do
going to
that.
ask, if I could update the BIOS.
A lot
Yeah,
of times, yes.
Yeah, you can try and get a new BIOS for it. The other thing is, are you using the EFI boot right now?
I don't know what kind of boot I'm using.
Okay, because normally with Win 10, it wants to do an EFI boot. But if you go back to the legacy, sometimes the legacy boot will allow the USB to be seen.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
another
over
option.
my head.
See, how old is the machine approximately?
I can't tell you. It's one that I bought secondhand at a garage sale, and I repaired the keyboard on it because the guy was a smoker and melted a few keys. So I repaired the keyboard, and that was in 2011.
Okay,
So-
you're probably talking an MBR type disk format. There's no UEFI.
Well, they've had UEFI since Win 7 came out in 2007.
Yeah, not
It's
on
got
all
10
the
on it,
machines.
but
Not all the
that's-
machines.
That's
Some
the
of them
software,
do,
not the
yes,
hardware.
but not
Well,
all.
usually it would complain when you tried to install Win 10 on it originally, unless you did an upgrade from a real old Win 10 and didn't get up to the 2022. Because if you started with like 1805 or whatever it was back then, and then have been doing successive upgrades, you might have been able to get 5 without having to do the UEFI boot in the ROM.
I think I had put 1809 on it
Okay.
a long time ago.
See, I have some old machines that do have 10 on it, and it's strictly MBR. There is no GPT, period. So
Okay.
there's no UEF partition, but I can take quite often that drive out, put it in a machine that normally expects UEFI, set the BIOS to legacy, and everything works fine.
I've never upgraded BIOS. I'm a little afraid to do that. How complicated is that?
It is a bit intimidating. There is no question about it. But most of the time, it does work out well. But you got to read up on it. Usually, there are multiple ways, even on that age of a machine, to do the BIOS. Sometimes you make a flash drive with a piece of software. You put the BIOS on the flash drive, and you boot the system up off of that.
Which it won't recognize.
And there's other machines where it updates internally while the machine is running. That's a little more modern.
Yeah, I did see.
You might be able to find an option that says in the BIOS, upgrade the BIOS, and then it'll ask you in the to plug in a USB.
Okay.
Because I've upgraded BIOSes from floppy disk in the past and from usually flash drives. And on occasion, like Tim was mentioning, sometimes they will actually be able to update it while it was under Windows.
Yeah.
But usually they try and protect against things like that.
Offhand, I've only had 2 machines that I borked the BIOS. Other than that, I've done, I don't know how many updates. I didn't bother keeping track, and they all went fine. So if in 20 years you only had 2 failures, that ain't too bad a track record.
Yeah. Did you have your hand up, Sid? Okay, all right. Okay, let's see what I got here. If I can find my presentation here a moment. Okay, get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of this. That's not the one I want. That's not the one I want. Here, that is it. That's the one I want, right there. Do this. Okay. Okay, go back. All right, and now we can do share. Share in the right place. Share, okay, and let's do this. There's the button I want, chat.
Is this related
All
to
right.
your
And
earlier
3
message?
dots. That's not the one I want. File.
Is this related to your earlier message that I got?
What, recycling computer?
Well, it says recycling old equipment.
No, has nothing to do with that yet.
Okay.
Although that is something I would like to recycle. Yeah. Let's go ahead and do this way so I can find this. No, it's not in documents. It's on the desktop. That's why I can't find it. Good. And I will also make this presentation available in chat. Okay, recycling your old equipment. So typically January is the time to go ahead and figure out what you have and what you need to throw out. Because if you're like me, you collect way too much equipment. My wife will be able to testify to that effect in court. So the first thing you got to make sure is you got to back up your old information, particularly if you're discarding an old machine. I'm probably going to have to upgrade to, what is that one that's the popular one for backup, Mecrium Reflect?
Yeah.
I may have to go ahead and bite the bullet and get that because my Acronis people have decided to move on toward a different direction from just what I would consider a sane backup, and now they want to take over the control of everything that you've done with the backup, and that's a little bit too intense, I think. I want something that's just a simple backup where I can control the backups and let it go ahead and cycle to the next one as needed. Is it time to recycle some of the old equipment? Well, if it's getting to the point where you're not going to be able to upgrade to the next operating system, and or it's using a lot of power, more than you need, perhaps. Some of the chips that you can get now are a lot more power efficient, like some of the Ryzen chips use a lot less power than the appropriate Intel chips. If you have an old laptop, a lot of the old laptops would have multi-core machines, and most of the retail laptops have gone to the point where, oh, you'll get an i7, but only with 2 cores. It might have some reserve cores, but that's all in the method to reduce the power so that a laptop can run a lot longer on a battery. If you also had a consumer level laptop, you probably need to replace the battery as well, because the battery charge mechanism on commercial laptops far exceeds that which you can get on consumer laptops. So you may want to, by the time you start putting in, I got to need to put more RAM in, I got to put, a bigger drive in here. Maybe the SSD is seeing better days. I need, it just won't support it, don't have the right video for it. So time to think about moving on some of those. What can you do with the old machine? Well, you can still run Linux on some of these things and turn it into a glorified Chromebook. That's one possibility. Or there are some other things you can possibly do with it if you think you have room to keep it while it's running. So the older machines are probably have less power than the typical new Raspberry Pi. And for the most part, they have less computing and memory resources than even some of these new little single board computers. Older machines will probably not support the latest Wi-Fi technologies, including WPA3. If you don't have WPA3 capability in the Wi-Fi, well, then you're not going to be able to use Wi-Fi 6 or 7. You might not be able to get memory updates, or you can't get a big enough memory on the thing to be able to run adequately. Typically, if you're buying anything less than 16 gig now, you're probably undersized. Older Chromebooks do have a expiration date on them where they're no longer supported. That means you won't be getting updates for it. Doesn't say that they won't work, it's just that they're no longer supported. And it's a possibility they might become a little bit more vulnerable. If you're using Zoom a lot, you'll find out that you almost now require to have at least 4 execution units to make Zoom happy. If you have anything less than that, like an only dual core or something without 4 execution units, you will get some tearing of your video or pixelation, or it'll disturb the audio. I can even see issues with Zoom on a quad core, but that I don't see on a quad core with hyper-threading, other machines. And could be the video card. More than likely, it's anytime I go outside of Zoom to do anything, I will get some pixelation and or dropped audio. Usually it's only on the receive and not the send. Now, so you made a decision after you've made a backup of your information, you actually want to recycle it. Where can I take it if I want to recycle it somewhere? And then we'll discuss in the next slide, what do you do before you recycle it? So I know in Lake County, where I'm at, we're fortunately able to recycle up to 7 computers at once. Only 1 monitor per visit, but you can take 7 desktops or combinations of desktops and laptops to Prairie Land Recycling up in Wakanda. They used to be in Lake Barrington, now they're in Wakanda. And in Cook County, you can go to Elgin Recycling and they will recycle computers free for Cook County residents. However, they recycle CRTs and monitors, LCD monitors, for a fee. Your local county websites can also point you in the direction whether they have computer recycling or device recycling as well. Some retailers, like Best Buy, if you bring your monitor to them and you pay their $10 or $15 fee, you will get a credit chit to be applied to new purchases to offset that. You can also see if there are places that might accept donations of older machines as long as they aren't obsolete. I mean, it may not be adequate for you. Maybe you can't see that 15-inch or 14-inch screen anymore and you had to go to something bigger. Well, somebody else might be able to utilize that. So I know there's some things, and I think Tim used to do some of that recycling for some senior organizations as well. So if it's a gently used machine and doesn't have much use on it, that may be an avenue where you can explore. So how do you recycle these things? Well, usually it helps if you can erase the hard drive or remove it from the chassis. On most desktops, not a problem. On many laptops, not a problem. On some laptops or tablets, impossible. Because you have to take off a glued on back to even access the hard drive in some of those cases. Okay. In some cases, you can take your old hard drive if you're going to have this thing scrapped and use it as a backup drive in a USB enclosure, and then use it with another machine or keep a copy of your data as an extra backup. SSDs used beyond 5 years might be questionable. That's the life that they will put on these things, and once they hit past their life, they become unusable quickly. Regular hard drives usually are good for a lot longer than that. Typically, I've had at least 10 years, sometimes 15 or 20 on some hard drives if they haven't been used much. As long as been used in a clean environment, they're not subject to a lot of dust and contamination. If they've been plugged in but not even run, just having the chassis plugged in to keep the capacitors charged, things work better. Chromebooks, if you want to recycle a Chromebook, there's several options that you can have. After you've backed up what few amounts of data you've actually saved on it, you can try and reset the Chromebook to factory settings. Some have a thing called Power Wash to reset the Chromebook. Developer modes can be used to wipe the Chrome OS data and remove other browsers that you may have installed on it. Usually after you've reset it to defaults where you would have to re-provision the Chromebook for a new user, that usually means it's pretty well cleaned out. Not completely, but if you've already deleted any files you were able to store on the Chromebook hard drive and clear those out, you're probably going to be okay. With phones and some tablets, you can master reset to clear out most of the user data. If you have a Windows tablet without a removable SSD hard drive, you can manually delete all the files, empty the trash bin, and then use something like CCleaner Wipe Disk that will re-erase the free space. Yes, Bill?
Yeah, on the phones, I have an old iPhone 7 that I was going to give to my brother. And in order to master reset it, I would master reset it, but then it would load everything back in. So you have to go into the cloud and have it forget that phone. So I just
Right.
comment on that.
Yeah, you have to follow a procedure if this is not your current phone to make sure that you've already migrated to the new phone. So you probably pulled out the SIM card or disabled the SIM so that it can't be used in place of your current phone. And then when you master clear, it's not going to be able to download from anywhere. So
Yeah, I didn't pull out the SIM card, but I went onto the cloud location and had it forget that phone.
Good. Okay. So after you've done CCleaner to wipe the disk, to erase the free space, that basically not only, it took and reallocated something over all the free space and rewrote over it with zeros so that there's nothing that somebody can pull back. Then you can go ahead and reset the OS to factory settings, erasing your accounts and everything, and put you back to a clean machine to which you could donate that. If you have older laptops which may have run XP or barely Win 7, you could actually use some Linux distributions on them to do something with them if you don't want to throw them out, but you think you could use it. Laptops are a lot easier to use for some of these things than desktops because they run a lot lower power, but it's still going to be more than a typical NAS drive. And NAS drives can be very low power. So they'll use 20 watts. A typical laptop, when it's powered on, will probably be between 30 and 50 watts. There are a great number of low resource required distributions of Linux that you can be used on older processors. So there's a whole bunch of legacy vintages out there. You pick the highest vintage that your processor will support and you'll probably be pretty well off. And you could use these as a file server, could be used as a media server, or they can even be used for IoT applications to locally host storage and programming for the IoT devices. This is where I would use it as an alternative, one of the hundreds or so alternatives to if this then that service that you would have to subscribe to and pay for. Now you can point to your own server and do the same kind of things. Another possible use for an old laptop might be a security camera server to cache images from locally IP connected cameras. You might need to add a larger capacity hard drive, but this is doable for many machines. The ones with the higher efficiency power supplies would work better to reduce electricity costs. I mean, you could consider using an SSD and having even less power, but even with an SSD being used as a security camera storage, you're continuously overwriting sectors. So you have to be cognizant of how big is this, how many times am I going to be able to overwrite it, in what period of time, and when should I think about replacing it. And if you're replacing older machines running on distribution such as Win 10, keep in mind that software support will be limited, and Microsoft will soon stop sending new Windows 10 distributions. Also, if you're recycling a CRT or even an LCD, expect to possibly have to pay a charge to recycle it responsibly. It cannot be disposed of in the trash because the glass CRTs do capture some residual radioactivity that you don't want putting into landfills. So they have an ecological way of recycling these things and disposing of it properly so that it does not contaminate groundwater. And that is pretty much my presentation. So let me go back to this so I can see everyone's smiley face and say, who has questions?
And also regarding, shall we say, taking an Afterlife Chromebook, you can convert it to a Linux laptop.
Yeah.
I've done 6 or 7 of them.
Yeah, and that's a very valid point where the Linux distribution is still supportable. You can still get distributions, Debian or whatever, that will run on that hardware. The hardware is probably newer than a lot of PCs. And you can put, in some cases, you can put a larger hard drive in, not always. You know, some of them have the difficulty, they weren't designed to be opened. I think the Dells do, though. So I think some of the Dell you can get better results.
Another one is Acer C710. There you can put even a 2.5-inch drive of any size, whether it's a hard disk or an SSD. And supposedly in 2 SODIMMs, you can go as high as 16 gigabytes on an 11.6-inch screen.
Now you can't read the screen, but you can run whatever you want.
Many Chromebooks, however, use eMMC memory, which is permanently soldered.
Yeah, if it's soldered on the board, you're not going to be able to, but sometimes you can plug in. I've had some instances where you can use the USB port to put an external hard drive on and then run stuff off of that.
Actually, you can use SD cards on many of them.
Well,
And if there's a interface to plug an SSD, you can do that too. Yeah.
Not SSD, SD.
SD cards, yes. Although I still, running off of an SD card or running off of a flash drive and not an external hard drive, I always question as to how much am I going to use up of the life of that USB or SD card.
That's right.
Because I have had SD cards, 64 gig SD cards fail. And was not happy the way they failed because when they failed, it wasn't a nice failure. I couldn't recover the information off of them. Initially, I started losing a file or two, and I made a backup of it. And then it just completely died. And the only backup I had, because these happen to be in phones, was my Google Cloud images, which I was able to recover the rest from.
Well, another little trick is that the bus for the Wi-Fi card that's in some of these devices, you can take that out, put in a memory card like an SSD or an mSATA drive, then use a USB Wi-Fi dongle and still function.
Okay. Yeah, Sid, you had your hand up.
Let me unmute. First off, slides, please.
I put them in chat already.
Okay, I didn't get them. You sure you sent it to everyone?
Oh, let me check. I thought I
Not
did.
in my chat.
I don't have it either.
I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't. Let's do it to everyone.
So there.
My problem. Okay. Give me a second here and it will be going like your computer, not their computer, my computer. Okay. All right. On its way. Hold on. file is already in the compose. Okay, good. Send. There we go. Now it's on its way.
It's
Okay,
here.
got
Boom,
it.
boom, boom. Good.
Yeah, the other thing about Chromebooks, if you want to do a full Linux replacement, very often you have to actually go inside the Chromebook and physically remove a physical write protect screw.
Well,
Ooh.
it's not just a screw. Some models it's a screw, but there's a total of 4 different models, and I've played with 3 out of the 4.
And it's not just a jumper, it's a screw that is used to inhibit write requests to break. That's probably a security mechanism to keep them from getting hacked.
Most likely.
That's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
But once you remove that, you can do a full ROM replacement. And while you're in there, you might just as well get a new battery in there.
Yeah.
So if you don't remove that, you're screwed, basically, I guess.
No, you have to unscrew it first.
Yeah, but if it's still there, you're screwed.
Yeah.
There you go. You were talking
good
about
pun.
using an SD. He's talking about using an SD card. I like to use SD cards in the machines, but not particularly read-write. I put the media on that card. So any music or video stuff I want to look at, I put that on the SD. I don't use the SD card for add-on system storage.
Yeah, I wouldn't use it for a system. I'd use it for only data storage.
Unless you're
Right.
using a Raspberry Pi, especially version 1 and 2, where that was your drive. 3 and 4, there's a way of putting an SSD on.
I think there's a way to do it with even the older Raspberry Pi, depending on whether you can use the newer images, if they don't take up too much room, and basically redo the OS so it boots off of the only thing you put on the SD card is a transfer boot that boots up the real operating system on a USB image, which could be an external hard drive, a USB hard drive as well, if you really are looking to have longevity. Because I always question, like, how many writes are you going to get before this thing fails? Well, hopefully it's a giant SD card, but even so, yeah, could have issues.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about Linux is that you can run it off of an external drive, whereas you can't do that with Windows, but you can do that with some other OSs.
Actually, I was able to do that off of an external drive as long as it's in a virtual machine.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Bert, you had a question.
Well, how about using some of these old computers to create modern art? Take them apart and create some modern art.
You could do that too, although that's recycling it pretty much.
If you keep it long enough, it might be worth something.
I kind of doubt it. I got an IBM PC-1 in the basement. How much do you think it's worth?
To some
It does not.
collectors, it could be worth more than you think.
It does not have the original 8088 or 8088 in it. It has a V20 chip because I had one of the early 8088s that had the bug that could interrupt between the loading of a segment and an offset. So we pulled out the chip, put in a V20 chip, and it ran a little better. NEC V20. I don't even think NEC makes processors anymore. They've been out of that business a long time. About the same time Motorola did, I think.
Well, Motorola still did Apple for a while.
They did, yeah, PowerPC chips, yeah. And the PowerPC chips were used inside of a lot of the cable modem.
Yep.
Been there, done that. Where else was it used? I'm trying to remember. Actually, Motorola did come up with a PowerPC Unix implementation using System 5 R3.
Yeah, one of the PowerPC's ones were a lot of the early Macs.
Yeah, I say, well, some of the early Macs were actually 68030s and 68040s. And then they moved on to stuff, but the PowerPC was pretty much adopted and was pushed by IBM, co-venture with Motorola. As I recall, I still have some old, I think I still have some old BME cards, MVME 1467s, I think. Yes, those are 68040 based. However, back then you had 16 megabytes of memory, and it was a lot. Not gigabytes, megabytes. In fact, the original versions of Unix ran on PDP-11s and PDP, let's see, what was the bigger one? PDP-10s, I think.
The old TI-99 4As had 48K of memory.
Yes, and if we remember, the Amigas ran with 68,000 chips as well. That's dating us a little bit, I think. I think my brother said there was a bug in the flight simulator in running on a 68K in an Amiga, where if you just started climbing with it above 50,000 feet, it would just climb forever and you couldn't stop it. Didn't quite go off into space. It just sort of went and got stuck there. Okay, other questions, maybe unrelated to the presentation. Anybody else think of something else that they forgot to ask?
All I know is I was throwing away old boxes. I had lots of old boxes. And I picked up a box and it was surprisingly heavy. And it was a Seal laser printer. So
yeah, that'll happen. What brand was it?
Canon.
Canon. Okay. Yeah, I think there might be a sealed box of a Canon printer somewhere in our church somewhere, come to think of it. I should get rid of it.
It was near the box with 1,000 pairs of latex gloves.
What'd you do? Get a sale on them from Amazon?
No, it was delivered to me for reasons I don't know that I didn't buy. The label was to my address. Somebody had to order it sometime. They never asked for it back. They never charged for it. It was a gross case of latex gloves.
That's
So
one of your prime benefits. That's an Amazon Prime benefit, getting random deliveries of somebody else's stuff.
I have no idea. It was shipped from a company somewhere out west. And I kept waiting for somebody to ask for it back or to trace it or something. Never heard of this. Was 2 years ago. It's still sitting here. So by now, I'm pretty sure they're not going to bother anymore.
I've had one or two of those things where something came addressed to me. I never ordered it. One of the things I have that I remember was a tactical flashlight. So one of these little tactical flashlights that have the, 1,000 to plus lumens capability or something and can blind your attacker, just came in a box. And I tried to figure out where it came from, someplace in Scottsdale, and trying to figure out if there was any way to contact them. Said, you sent it to the wrong person. I thought, well, maybe they sent it to me by random. Somehow they thought I was owed a flashlight. I saw your hand up, Dennis.
I've got two topics off of what we've been talking about. One, my son's getting ready to move into a home, and he sent me some links to, see the inside of the house, preview of the house. And there was a picture that showed a thermostat on the wall, and I wasn't quite sure if it was a Google Nest thermostat. So my question is this. I don't know anything about Wi-Fi thermostats, but if it was, if my son moves in, is there an issue with him trying to connect to somebody's previously owned used Wi-Fi thermostat? You have to replace it? Do you need a password, or is there an issue?
I'm not sure about the remote capability, but I know the local capability, you're going to have to go in and change it to the SSID of your access point. And I don't know if that will free up anything. There's probably going to be a master clear that you have to clear to even change it and get it into a mode where you could reprogram it for a new access point. But he'd have to be able to do that. And then once he's done that, there may be a capability that says, okay, I'm taking over this thing.
Yeah, you're going to have to do some research on the internet of the maker and model of thermostat and find all the information how to change all the settings.
Well, can it be used manually? I mean, I'm not familiar with these at all. Can you still?
Well, if you don't have the SSID, it's going to have whatever programming was there because the guy has taken his access point with him and gone. Unless it's configured to use Xfinity Wi-Fi and it goes through the neighbor's connection.
But can you still do it physically, manually with your hand to change settings?
You can, but if it's got setbacks and other things in there, you need to be able to change the programming. Let's do a...
yeah, and you may have to use like a smartphone or a wireless like Bluetooth keyboard to interface to it in order to do the programming. Okay,
so to give a device to another person, you must first perform a factory reset on the Nest.
Yeah.
And the person who he's buying the house from has to get into their Google Home and remove the device from their account. So
I noticed my Honeywell Wi-Fi thermostat has got a Samsung, basically a Samsung phone in it.
Well, that's pretty good if it's got a whole Samsung phone in it.
Well, it shows up as a Samsung, phone on my Wi-Fi system.
Oh, in that case, it's okay. In that case, what it probably is, it's using a Wi-Fi chipset that looks like it belongs to Samsung as the manufacturer.
Yeah.
So it may not be a Samsung phone. It is a Samsung-derived chipset. Yeah. I was just looking to see how I guess you can reset a Ecobee thermostat by pressing the right button to reset them and do a master clear on it. So depending on which smart thermostat it is, if it's a Google Nest, then usually, I'm not sure, and probably Alexa devices as well. Both of them probably have to be removed by the current owner and freed up before you can take over it. Just like a Blink camera, I can't provision a Blink camera that somebody else provisioned. I need to release it, delete it from my account, and then somebody else can take over it and provision it.
Well, the house he's looking to move into, the owner moved out even a few months ago.
Well, he may have released it from his Google Home, or you can contact him and said, can you remove this from your Google Home account? Because he may still have it on your Google Home. I don't know if you can contact Google and said, I am now the one that lives in this house. How do I get this thing provisioned for me? And maybe they can go and do that. I don't know.
Okay.
Let's see if I can do this. Google Nest. Oops, that's not Google at all that I typed. Nest. Reprogrammed. Without prior owner.
There's obviously some sort of an app that fits on the phone, whether it's an iPhone or it's the other type.
Well, here's the problem that the previous owner had with his Nest. I moved into a house which had a Nest and thermostat installed in it. The previous owner did not remove the account from the device, and I am unable to connect to that device in my app. I don't want to perform a factory reset, as I'm not sure what else I would lose if I did that. I saw an option on reset on the device to allow me to remove the owner from the device, thus probably enabling the new user to connect. Want to make sure this is the right way to remove the owner. Is there any other way to do it? And that may be a way to do it. You may have to look on the back plate to see what its version is of the Nest issue. I mean, there's other issues like the previous owner died. I don't have the passcode. I mean, and worst comes to worst, buy a new Nest thermostat, unplug it, because you know the new one will probably connect to where the old one was. And if you have to buy a new one, do it through the ComEd website, because they usually give you a significant discount on it. Because I've seen where
Got
they
an email
have,
on that.
huh?
I got an email on that from ComEd. They're doing the Nest Lite, I think it's called, for $5 after
Yeah.
the rebate.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a number of ones there. They cycle through the different ones. I could get an ecobee Lite. I think I got an ecobee, but I still haven't run my 8-wire thermostat cable because I don't want to play the game with the let's steal 1 wire to do 2 trick. So I bought the 8-wire cable, 100 feet worth, and I'm going to wire it up one of these days. I think I'm going to have to use the Ron Tuit for that one.
Well, some
But,
thermostats require 2 and some require 3 wires.
Well,
So
no,
if
it's
you
just
got-
that the standard wiring for most thermostats with heating and air conditioning used to be 5 wires. The newer ones provide 8. With 8 wires, I can control a 2-stage heat and air conditioning and a humidifier. So with 8, you've got everything. With 5, you used to have everything, but you can't do the power to just run the thermostat. It's got to steal power from either heat or cool. And if you put it to the middle position off, it has no power at all to it, which means it will basically use up its battery and then die at some point in time, unless you play this game with a power stealing device that is installed at the furnace end, so it can sneak power in without running the heat. Been down this path. You have the red wire, the white wire, the yellow wire, the black wire, and like some of these are for the way the 5-wire interfaces used to work. There was one common and a heat or a cool, and you would short the heat to the cool through a resistor to turn on heat, or you would short the common to the cool and basically call for cool. There was a separate pair of wires for the fan that you would connect to common as well. But there was no wire that just said, give me the 24 volts that's running down there on the transformer so I can power my smart thermostat up on the wall. If you can't guess, I have been involved with heating and air conditioning systems in the past. When you have older homes, they only had the 5 wires, or they may have only had 3. They only had heat, they had no air conditioning. So they just had the old round Honeywell thermostat, basically had the 3 wires, had the common, heat, and fan. And it would, when the mercury would bend over in the one area and turn the spring, then it said call for heat. And the hysteresis was baked into the characteristics of the bimetallic spring as to how long it would run before it turned off. And you could add a switch on the side of those old round thermostats to just do cooling, not cooling, to do the fan. And that was your cooling back then. And if you had to do air conditioning, then you had to run a couple more wires. But that's the way they used to do it. Currently now, like I said, they do 8-wire thermostats now, and that handles just about everything you would want to do in a regular installation. It has the first stage, second stage, independent control. I mean, I've been able to run a 2-stage furnace years ago with a thermostat on only 5 wires, but there it defaulted. When you turned on heat, it would run on low for the first 10 minutes, and then if it still hadn't satisfied the heat, which it never did, it would kick into high, and then the high would kick in, and 2 minutes later, it would shut down again. So you had to have options on the controller board on the furnace to say how long to run in first stage before you went to second stage. When I had started having issues with some of the drafting controls and other stuff on the furnaces, I asked my heating and air conditioning guy that, okay, I'm tired of these things failing in the middle of the night or the day before, you know, a holiday. What kind of furnace do you recommend, and what do you have in your house? And he said, 96% efficient single stage. Turns on, it heats, turns off, done, okay? No second stage, no super efficient motor, turns on, heats, turns off. Some respects, simpler is better. There's more reliability because there's less physical components. With a 2-stage furnace, you think, well, I got 2 stages. I'm better off having 2 stages. Well, I got news for you. All furnaces that have 2 stages have to go through stage 1 before they go to stage 2. If stage 1 is broke, don't think about stage 2. Because it won't go there. So, yeah, in that respect, you know, I mean, the microprocessor that's on some of these boards, you know, you have to figure some of these things are like, you know, 17 years old. I just happened to have to replace 2 controller boards on 2 Linux furnaces in our church, which failed right before Christmas Eve service. That was convenient. Good thing we still had a 2.25 million BTU boiler that was still putting some heat through the radiators, but needless to say, the additional heat in some of the other rooms wasn't there. Turned out that both controller boards had failed. And it just happened to be the controller chip on both of these boards was the PIC M77. So little 8-bit microprocessor with 8 A to D converters. That's what they used back then. So interesting stuff. Other questions? No other questions? We're all silent? Oh, there's Sid and Dennis. Sid first.
I can't be silent. I don't do that well. I remember with my original Ring doorbell, there was no such thing as clearing it for another user. Once it was on an account, it could never be removed or reused on another account. They considered that a security thing in case somebody stole it. They wouldn't be able to use it. And the tile guys, the little tiles, are the same way. Once they're attached to an account, they can never leave that account. In case somebody else.
They had that same thought for the Blink cameras, but there is a provision in the Blink cameras to unprovision them. In case you wanted to sell this thing along with your house, and since this is now attached to your house, it's considered a fixture, and if you remove it from the house, then you are denying somebody some value in the house. So you would either have to tell them, I'm taking the Ring camera with me. You'll have to provide your own and make that as a condition of the sale. So, yeah. So, like I said, some things I've seen where you can go in and there is a provision where they can deregister a device and then it can be used by somebody else. The only question is, how easy do they do that?
Yeah, I knew that with the Blink because the first one they sent was defective and I had to remove it before I could install the replacement they sent.
Yeah, that's usually what it'll do. Well, I did find out my refrigerator has updated at least a partial upgrade without asking me about trying to manually do it because there was no manual capability to do the upgrade, or it refused to do it. And the thing I'm looking for here, and what I was able to determine is that the refrigerator is using about 43 kilowatt hours per month. So by that estimate, it's costing me about $6 a month to run my new refrigerator. Of which I think my previous refrigerator was probably using a lot more than that, because I'm sure it was leaking around the seal and it was sucking up more power, because I got a nice little thing from ComEd that said, you're using less power than you were last month. Thought for sure, you know, like, okay, well, it's about the same physical size refrigerator, but it had the linear compressor instead of a rotary compressor. So I thought, well, maybe that's more efficient. We'll see. But so far, it's doing better. Seems to be relatively happy at doing what it needs to do, making ice cubes occasionally and making these crashing noises when it drops the big ice cubes into the tray. And you're thinking, somebody knocking at the door? What is? Oh, that's the ice maker. And then every once in a while, I hear it purring when it's not supposed to. Like, what are you doing? And quickly get onto the app and look at, oh, it's pulling in fresh air. Like, okay, that's something that's different as well. I never had refrigerators in the past that pulled in fresh air. But it is a little disconcerting to see, you know, it is doing updates all by itself, and it's doing some of these cycles without any intervention. And there is a way on that to free it up so somebody else can provision. I can remove that device from my home, and then somebody else can provision it. They'd have to go and do the manual effort where you press some buttons inside the refrigerator to assign it to a new Wi-Fi, but they could go ahead and do that, and then they could provision it in their home. So that's pretty much straightforward. I am not going to put the stove on the internet. There's just something wrong about something that controls fire on the internet.
Or even having somebody remotely lock your refrigerator door so you can't get in.
Well, the refrigerator does not have any locks, although it does complain incessantly if you happen to leave it open more than 45 seconds. It starts chiming, and if you have notifications turned on, now it starts sending text messages. The door is open. The door is open. Help me, help me, help me.
That locking of the refrigerator door is probably a hack by Weight Watchers.
Well, I could see somebody locking an oven door, because the oven door needs to be locked before you can do a clean cycle. But usually that's a manual interlock, and then once the clean cycle is started, you cannot open the oven door, because there's just something about opening an oven door that's running at 950 degrees. Not good for the person opening the door.
Yeah, it's kind of like washing machines have a lockout where you can't open them while they're spinning.
Right. But I'm just wondering, you know, what other kinds of things will we have what will be the next thing they hook up to Wi-Fi? Okay. I already have my garage door hooked up to it with the camera, so I can watch the spiders spin webs across the lens.
How about the wife?
No, she's not connected to Wi-Fi. She's cellular, so.
Bring me a beer.
That only works one time. That's a one-time funny, as they used to say, and the moon is a harsh mistress.
You have to train your dog.
Yeah, I could hook up the cat box to Wi-Fi and then run that manually, or at least know when the cat's been in it. That would be a good one.
Yeah.
Well, at least know that, okay, she used it. That's a good thing. Because sometimes I'm a little concerned when, okay, the cat has not used this in 24 hours. I hope this is okay, or I'm going to have to make a visit to the vet. Cats can be that way. Other questions? Wayne, you look like you're pensive there. Dennis, you had your hand up. Unmute.
Unmute, okay.
Okay, there you go.
So I was helping out this lady from church, and she gave me 2 old She uses a service, not lawn service. And she gave me 2 old grass trimmers, electric, and they take the batteries.
Are they battery operated?
Yeah, they're battery operated.
Okay,
That's Black and Decker.
yep.
These are, let me show it here. These are like 15 years old or something. Now,
They're nickel cadmium battery packs.
right. So I tried charging these, and after charging them forever, I put them in. It'll run for 5 minutes, but even for the 5 minutes that it runs before it dies, it twirls around, it bends the grass, will actually cut the grass with the string. So I was looking online and some of these batteries, and some people were saying, try to use lithium battery.
Right.
And so-
You could replace the battery pack with different kinds of batteries. However, you need a lithium battery pack charger if you even think about that.
okay.
Two problems about just moving from nickel cadmiums to lithiums. It can be done in some cases, but not many. There are the 2 things you have to be careful of. They have to be charged with a lithium battery charger, constant current, and monitor the temperature, because it gets anywhere close to thermal runaway, you want to stop the charge cycle. Nickel metal hydride batteries don't have that same protection, so they're not measuring the temperature as accurately as they need to with lithium battery. Second problem, lithium batteries cannot be pulled down too low voltage or you damage the lithium battery. So there has to be a low voltage shutdown of the device before it reaches that voltage level. Now, there's another problem. Lithium batteries have a different voltage than nickel metal hydrides. Nickel metal hydrides typically are 1.35 volts per cell. Lithiums can either be 3.3 or they can be 3.6, depending on which lithium battery chemistry was used. So if you charge a 3.6 cell all the way up, it goes up to 4.05 volts. If you do a 3.3, it only charges up to 3.9. And one of them is a lithium polymer, the other one is a lithium metal, I'm trying to remember the other one. It'll come to me. Lithium ion. Yeah, lithium ion. So depending on which lithium you have, depends on which charger you need, because you need to shut down at the right voltage. That's why it's not simple. Easiest thing to do on those, you can either have somebody rebuild it with the right nickel metal hydride pack and use the existing nickel metal hydride charger. NiCad or nickel metal hydride basically can almost use the same charger.
Yeah, but
So if you have an existing charger that works, but Black & Decker was not known for having efficient NiCad chargers. They used to just charge, and then you were expected to pull this thing off the charger when the green light went on and not leave it on there permanently, because it would still cook the batteries.
Yeah, and nickel cadmium has memory that says as it ages, you will get up to a certain point and you can't go beyond that point, like say 80%.
Maybe on the old batteries, but nothing on the current ones, never with the hydrides. The hydrides never had the memory effect. But nickel cadmium and nickel metal hydride do have what's called self-discharge. That means they can discharge over a period of like 60 days without you doing anything to them. That's because of leakage within the cell. And I just saw an article also that somebody had done some research on lithium battery packs. This is good. They found a way to increase the number of lithium charge cycles because they found lithium battery packs were self-discharging. And the reason they were self-discharging was the tape that they used to isolate some of the electrodes and tape stuff on to the lithium batteries within the battery pack would break down with heat and time and would actually contaminate the electrolyte inside the lithium battery. They were looking at lithium batteries and they found the electrolyte had been turning red. And they're thinking, where did this come from? And they started analyzing what the red substance was, and it turned out to be a decomposition product of the tape that was being used on the batteries. So if you don't have tape on the batteries, they might last and recharge a lot longer. And I thought, well, that's interesting. You mean they designed this thing to do this? I don't think they had any idea that it was going to happen this way. And lithium batteries can have a vent, so when they are being charged, if instead of exploding, they can vent gas out of the battery itself. And that's how air can get back in again. When the battery cools down again, there's going to be a vacuum. So it could pull, that's how it pulls the decomposition product of the tape back into the battery and contaminate the battery and have it. So this contamination would cause self-discharge across the dendrite between the, it was actually kind of strange because normally you only have lithium ions going one direction and then they go back into the electrolyte when the discharges. What happens with this particular polymer when it contaminated the batteries, it could go back and forth between the electrodes, even when the battery wasn't being used, and that's what was causing the self-discharge. Very interesting reading. If anybody else wants it, send me an email and I will go ahead and forward the copy of the article to them. I don't happen to have it on this machine, unfortunately. But hopefully, I know I've been watching a couple of lithium battery companies and such, and possible storage for larger systems. One that's being promoted for large energy storage for the grid. They're proposing using a iron air batteries. They're not good for immediate power, but they're good for a large amount of slow power that can be pulled out of the battery over a period of time and then recharged. So basically you're rusting the battery internally and then you're converting the rust back to iron when you charge it up. But you can build a battery the size of a building and use it to help power the grid when it needs, when there's a shortfall from solar or from wind power, and be able to cover those shortfalls without having to have some peaker plants that kick in and restore the power that's needed.
Or just add nuclear plants to the grid.
Well, you could add nuclear power plants to the grid like we have all over in Illinois, but a nuclear power plant is either on or off. There's no halfway.
Yeah,
So,
whatever the nukes put out is going to be stored.
yeah, well, or you have the nuke storing the power in these iron batteries. But
That's right.
it's just that you can't use it to cover the shortfalls because it takes too long to come up and too long to shut down, and then you're not really using it efficiently. I know that ComEd is asking for another rate increase again to improve the grid again.
Well, the grid's always being improved, but that even happens where we're still burning natural gas.
Yeah. That
That's
was
just-
something. Yeah.
that's just
Natural gas.
bizarre.
I mean, do you have a lot of natural gas users in your neck of the woods, or is it mostly electric?
We have a lot of gas hookups. We also have places that have propane and places that do not use any gas. But our electric power generation in the Northeast is mostly natural gas.
Okay. All right. Because I know that in Michigan, where we were looking at places to possibly purchase, and you're looking at Zillow listing, when it says heating system is unspecified, that means it's electric. They don't want to tell you that there's no gas line to run natural gas to run natural gas in these things, but it's going to be almost always electric heat. Now, granted, there is a the Cook Nuclear Power Plant right there on Lake Michigan, just south of, let's see, it's south of, it's north of New Buffalo
Up by
and
Bridgman.
in Berrien County.
It's up by Bridgman.
Yes. In fact, I've looked at a couple of houses there, you know, that were advertised for sale. That, oh, that's a nice house. Oh, that's pretty nice. Why is it so low? And it's like about less than 1 mile from the nuclear power plant.
Well, for the old design nuclear power plants, that was perceived as a risk. But there are newer designs that are a lot safer.
I'm sure it's safer. It's just the idea of being, you know, downwind of a nuclear power plant because we have prevailing westerly, so the wind would go right from that power plant wherever you live.
Yeah, if anything ever happened.
And I happen to have visited both Fermi and Argonne National Laboratories when I was going to school. Fermi was just being put on board right then, but Argonne occasionally would lose something that went down a drain, and then people would be outside going and walking down the watershed looking for where it may have gone. Okay, you just lost that nuclear source that you have. How many Curies was it?
Yeah, well, that would only end up in the quarry down below.
No, this was actually in the watershed that would end up in the Illinois River. Unfortunately, the Des Plaines runs not too far away from that.
Yeah, the Des Plaines runs right through the quarry.
Oh, yeah, if it sinks, yes.
Yeah, the only
But it
thing
was-
the only thing in my apartment which is gas is the furnace. Everything else is electric.
Yeah.
But as I say, all the electric is probably sourced more than 30%, maybe 50% from natural gas.
Okay, yeah. Because I had seen, you know, because they're talking about possibly banning gas stoves in the future, okay? Which might be an issue for some people. I mean, I would, in our case, I'd have to have the electrical connection brought up from the panel because I don't have an electric connection behind where my stove is, only a gas connection. And
You need
110
220
outlet.
anyway.
Huh?
You need 220 anyway.
Yeah, I would have to bring 220 up. But if I was going to do that, I probably would do one of the induction stoves or something like induction panels or something.
Yeah. They're not going to ban gas stoves. That was completely
Just California.
misinterpreted. That was completely misinterpreted science.
Just California.
Just California, yeah. They want to do it.
California is not going to do it, but they'd be the place that would do it if anyone would.
Well, they're going to wash away soon anyway. If a couple more rainstorms come through, they'll have filled up all the reservoirs. I think they're already filled now. They just haven't filled up Lake Mead yet. That's over Nevada.
Believe it or not, that really doesn't do much for the drought because it's all running off. And
Well, no, they said
it's not recharging.
but the thing that I saw recently, at least in Northern California,
Yeah.
the reservoirs that they use up there, because they had the successive rains which saturated the ground, the runoff went right into the reservoir, and they showed one of these reservoirs near Sacramento, which had it was almost dry, and now it's up at full and a little bit above.
Yeah, that could still be wiped out, except that they do have some pretty good snow cover in the Sierras now and in the
Yeah.
Cascades.
And I think they're going to get some more before the winter's done.
Well, we're about to get a little more snow out here.
We are much more fortunate than you in that respect. Our snow totals have been way below what they were planning, and it's been mostly warmer. It's been just warm enough to keep everything melted for the most part. In fact,
we've been getting some rain to give us the moisture that we need anyway, so we're really in better shape than sometimes.
yes, much better, much better.
Yeah, Massachusetts has a very local drought situation going on that it dates back to last spring.
Now, when people said, well, where are you going to move to if you retire? I says, well, right here, well, you're not going to move to something warmer like Florida or Arizona? And I say, well, Florida could be underwater sooner than they may expect. In Arizona, the drought has really hit them. They're into like a 20-year drought right now, where Scottsdale just started shutting off water to some of the people that are in the unincorporated area outside of Scottsdale. So now they're trying to worry about putting on rain recovery mechanisms to save any rainwater they have, so they have something to use.
Yeah, that is not drought related. They're overstressing the groundwater and have been for like about a decade or two.
And they don't have enough to handle all of the Western Phoenix now.
Yep. And the Colorado River has never delivered as much water as it is rated for.
Well, and I've been there last time. They used to have the Salt River that runs right through Phoenix would occasionally overflow its area. It was kind of weird. I was there for the 200-year back-to-back floods in the 80s, in which case I thought they had this big bridge, this big suspension bridge, like, okay, and people went one direction on the suspension bridge, and when they went back the other way, they drove on a paved road that went right across the riverbed. And the explanation to that was, for one bridge, I can repave this road 10 times. So, okay, it's cheaper to put the road right here. Well, then they had the 100-year floods back to back, and Sky Harbor Airport went from a 12,000-foot runway plus to 8,000 feet. Yeah, and they had to redo that paving more than twice. That was literally, the Salt River was a quarter-mile wide.
Now the Salt Lake is drying up.
Yeah, that too. Well, then what they did was they blocked off some of the Salt River and made it a permanent lake of some sort. And of course, by doing that, they increased the humidity in the Phoenix Valley. So when they used to have that line, oh, but it's that dry heat, 117 and humid, there's nothing to explain how that is like.
Well, you were living there during monsoon season, no doubt.
Oh, I was there in the summer. Yeah, 117 in the shade. Yes, at night.
But I'm talking about the monsoon season where it's anything but dry.
Yeah. It definitely pours. Yes. So interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Okay. Any suggestions for future meetings that you would like to see? I have silence. Silence. Okay, well, I'll figure out something.
And we're not even lambs.
Pardon?
I was thinking Silence of the Lambs. We're not even lambs. But
oh, okay. Yeah, that too.
Well, maybe we're sheep.
Anybody interested in how to deal with smart houses in general, and when you're trading them off, like you just talked about the thermostat problem, but smart houses are starting to have more and more things in them in some of the newer ones, and people are moving in and out of them, sometimes not very well educated on how to use what they've got. So,
okay.
I don't know if there's any way to put something together on that or not, but
I can put something together. I mean, some of it depends on how smart they decide to make it. If they use built-in receptacles, or if they use things that you plug into a receptacle to control devices. I mean, when you build it in, now it's pretty much part of the fixtures of the house. If it's plugged into an outlet, it's something that you can remove and take with you. So depending on the level of smartness, yeah, I can look into that too. And on how to reset the different kinds of thermostats, I can do that too.
Yeah, so now your house is going to come with a user manual and no one will read it.
That's true, but they used to come with user manuals. They used to give you a stack of, here's all of your appliances, here's the manual, read them and weep.
Right.
Now they tell you go online and get it and print it yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
That too.
Yeah. Thermostat or smart.
It was good coverage on doing the recycling thing though, because there's enough, those things keep constantly changing and you know, it's hard to keep up with what they're taking and what they're not taking sometimes.
Well, I know that I've been looking to see if my particular brand of smart device, the Wemos, have been on sale, and not too much. There's a lot of clones of them that are out there, and I'm not sure they may be all coming from China. I have no idea if they're as reliable or if they have other issues, but I guarantee they're not going to work with the same apps that I have. So how many remote control apps can you put on your phone before they start fighting each other?
And
I mean, I already got 3 basically right now. I got the refrigerator one, I got the one for the Wemo, and I have one for the garage door. You know, if I had a smart front door, is it compatible with the other 2? If I didn't buy a ring, if I bought a ring instead of that, then I have another thing. Fortunately, some of these things can be controlled by Google Home or Alexa, but not all of them play nicely. So now you got to figure out, okay, will they play with my Google Home, or do I have to get a new Google Home, a Google Nest, or a Google, what's the new, the Google with the display? I can't remember that one.
I have one. I got it for Christmas.
Okay.
I have. It has built-in sonar.
And does it have facial recognition too?
It uses sonar to watch your sleep. So it monitors your body as you sleep and what mode of sleep you're in. Then it's listening for snoring or any other sounds. And then it knows if you move or turn. So it reports how many times during the night you turn.
I've got that smart bed. I've got one of those smart beds, or what is it?
Well, I also have a Fitbit on, and they're
Oh,
both
yeah.
Google, so they talk to each other
Yeah.
and generate a full report.
Yeah,
So it has your pulse and other stuff as well. So it generates this whole sleep system report. And they were going to, starting in January, they were going to start charging for that as a premium service. And at the last minute, they decided to go another year before they do that.
Well, if you had TikTok into that mix, everybody in the world, China, everybody knew all your stuff.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
I was trying to remember the, oh yes, this was one that I had seen on Quora. It was sent to my Google feed. So the guy is trying to order a pizza, and the caller says, "Is this Pizza Hut?" And Google says, "No, it's Google Pizza." And it said, "I must have dialed the wrong number. Sorry." "No, sir, Google bought Pizza Hut last month." Caller, "Oh, I'd like to order a pizza." Caller, "My usual, you know me. According to our caller ID sheet, the last 12 times you ordered an extra large pizza with 3 cheeses, sausage, pepperoni, mushrooms, and meatballs on a thick crust." "Ah, super. That's what I'll have. May I suggest that this time you order a pizza with ricotta, arugula, sun-dried tomatoes, and olives on a whole wheat gluten-free thin crust." "What? I don't want a vegetarian pizza. Your cholesterol is not good, sir." "How the hell do you know that?" "We cross-referenced your home phone number with your medical records. As a result, we have your blood tests for the last 7 years."
Yeah.
"Oh, but I don't want any of your rotten vegetarian pizza. I already take medication for my cholesterol." "Excuse me, sir, but you have not taken your medication regularly. According to our database, you purchased a box of 30 cholesterol tablets once at Chemistry Warehouse 4 months ago." "I bought some more from another pharmacy." "That doesn't show up in your credit card statement." "I paid in cash, but you did not withdraw enough cash from your bank account." That's what's going to happen. Yeah. And then it goes on to say, if you didn't pull the cash and you have other sources, then you didn't report it on your tax return. Yeah, that's it. That's smart houses going bad. Yeah.
right.
But I could see where something like that happens, you know. It's kind of serious, but I will put down smart houses as a possibility. And how do you live with them or live without them?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions for the good of the Go to the CCS? Okay. In which case, I guess I will see you smiley faces next month.
Yeah.
But,
All right. Have a good
Okay.
evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.